Show. How are you feeling? I feel like I want to open my arms and wrap them around you in your entirety, all 15 million of you, though not all are registered voters. But the morning after an election that was the most Seinfeldian election I can recall in my time covering elections. Seinfeldian in that it was an election about nothing, and it was an election that changed nothing. That is where we are at. Oh, yeah, but by the way, depending on which critic you heard, we spent anywhere from $160 to $190 million to have an election that we did not need to have in the dead of winter 2025. When was the last time we had a winter election? Do I remember correctly? Back in was it the 80s? Anyway, we don't have winter elections for a reason. And I think everything went exactly as Doug Ford planned it to go. We had very little time to campaign. We had very little time to get everything organized in order to conduct an effective and efficient election. We had rotten weather, and we allowed and helped Doug Ford skate back to victory. Now, I will add to that. This is not meant to be in any way an anti-conservative or an anti-Doug Ford rant. If I were lining up Doug Ford alongside Marit Stiles, Mike Schreiner, or Bonnie Crombie, I'd probably give Mike Schreiner the nod over Doug Ford. I find Mr. Schreiner to be a man of strong character and deep integrity. But given the options, and when you are considering voting for somebody like Mike Schreiner, you're considering voting for the party that had 2 seats coming into this election, right? So you're thinking, well, the guy's not going to be premier, so I'm not going to elect a bunch of Greens, typically. What are your other choices? I think Marit Stiles has done a pretty decent job in opposition, and Bonnie Crombie and the Liberals, oh my. But more on that coming up at around 9:15. The bottom line is the day after the provincial election, we are in exactly the same place as we were on the day before the provincial election. We have another conservative minority or majority government, and it leaves one wondering what the heck it was all about in the first place.
1, 2, 3.
This show, well, it's all about your Farwell Show 5 to get things started on this Friday morning. Number 1, Doug Ford's Progressive Conservatives have been elected to a 3rd straight majority in Ontario.
This election was about who we are, about the future we choose for ourselves. Donald Trump thinks he can break us. He thinks he can divide and conquer, pit region against region. Donald Trump doesn't know what we know. He is underestimating us. He is underestimating the resilience of the Canadian people, the Canadian spirit. Make no mistake, Canada won't start a fight with the U.S., but you better believe we're ready to win one. So, folks, let me be clear. Canada will never, ever be the 51st state. And Canada is not for sale.
The PCs capture a majority of the seats in the provincial legislature, albeit a few less than they had prior. The NDP win 27. The Liberals manage 14 seats. Ford is the first premier to win 3 consecutive majorities in more than 60 years. Number 2, there's been no electoral change in our region. Catherine Fife still holds Waterloo for the NDP, while Aislinn Clancy ran away with Kitchener Centre for the Greens. Meantime, Conservatives Jess Dixon, Brian Riddell, and Mike Harris Jr. were all re-elected in Kitchener South Hespeler, Cambridge, and Kitchener-Conestoga, respectively. Number 3 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, Kitchener-Waterloo Oktoberfest has been named a 2025 Top 100 Festival and Event by Festivals and Events Ontario. In addition to this recognition, KW Oktoberfest also received the coveted Innovation Award for its expanded outreach and awareness efforts in Toronto and the GTA. Number 4, Statistics Canada says the economy ended last year stronger than expected. The agency says real gross domestic product rose 2.6% on an annualized basis in the final quarter of last year. That's well ahead of expectations from economists and the agency's own early estimates for growth of 1.8% annualized. StatsCan says a surge in household spending ahead of the holidays is to thank for the late year lift. And number 5 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, the 97th Academy Awards, hosted by Conan O'Brien, take place Sunday night. The fan favorite musical Wicked has received multiple nominations, including Best Picture. But for many Canadians, it's the film Honora they'll be watching for from Vancouver-born producer Samantha Kwan. And that is your Farwell Show 5 for this Friday morning after the night before's election. I got questions. I got a lot of questions. 2 big ones, though. What is up with the Ontario Liberal Party? And what is up in Kitchener-Conestoga? We'll talk about it coming up. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Let me tell you, one of the ways that participating in this show is different than participating in an election in this country. You can get exactly what you want when you ask for it. We don't get what we want from elections, and I've got so many thoughts on that. But on this show, every Friday is an all-request Friday. You ask, we respond. And Brian wanted to hear a little bit of the doctor from the Doobie Brothers, and so you get it on your all-request Friday here on the Mike Farwell Show today. We may be talk radio, but we've got music in our bones, and we'll play a little bit of it. If it's your favorite song, when you call up, let Devin, the guy on the other side of the glass, a.k.a. DJ Dev on Fridays, let him know what song you want to hear. We'll make sure we get it on. Or drop me an email, Mike at 570news.com. And we'll play a little bit of your favorite song at some point through the day today as time permits. I've got so many questions about last night's election. Let's start with the historically short memory that voters are alleged to have. Right? We talk about this a lot. A government can make this misstep or that misstep, but if they make that misstep 6 months or so before an election call, voters tend to put them back into power anyway because we quote unquote forget. We've got notoriously short memories. Well, you know what? Bonnie Crombie, the Liberal leader for now, and she says she's sticking around, can crow all she wants about the success that was the Liberals' return to official party status at Queen's Park, winning 14 seats last night. But the Liberal Party right now, I'm sorry to say, is an absolute dumpster fire in Ontario. Consider going back to 2003, at the end of Mike Harris's second term and the Common Sense Revolution. I know Ernie Eves finished that out, but nonetheless, Dalton McGuinty wins for the provincial Liberals in 2003 with 72 seats, almost as many as Doug Ford has now. In 2007, that dropped to 71 seats. 2011, the Libs went down to 53. Under Kathleen Wynne, they bounced back a little bit in 2014 to 58 seats. And then, when Ontario had had enough in 2018 and punted the Ontario Liberals from power, they were left with 7 seats. The joke became they're the minivan party. 4 years later, in 2022, they go from 7 to 8. And now in 2025, from 8 to 14. Again, you can spin it as a success if you want, winning almost 50% more seats, but 14 seats for the Liberal Party. We're talking 7 years now in the wilderness. Ontario voters have not forgotten. Their memory is long indeed. And it's a mess. It's an absolute mess within the Ontario Liberal Party, in my humble opinion. Connected to that, I think we see a couple of interesting things locally. One is in Kitchener Centre, where Aislinn Clancy skated to a second term. She was the winner of a by-election and now has come back, and it wasn't even close. What was really interesting to me is that the PC candidate in Kitchener Centre, who lives somewhere up by Barrie, placed second. Liberal candidate Colleen James had less than 6,000 votes. That's less than half that she won when she ran for municipal council. Colleen James won a seat on regional council and will return to it now because she didn't resign. She just took her leave of absence to run provincially. But she earned more than 13,000 votes in a municipal election and won less than half of that as a Liberal candidate in this provincial election. I have to think that the banner under which she was running was one of the biggest roadblocks for her. Because I don't know how you go from 13,000 plus votes municipally to less than 6,000 provincially. And I don't know if the banner is the biggest roadblock or not, because I think Rob Deutschman showed really well in Cambridge under that same Liberal banner. So I'm not really sure what to make of that. But the biggest thing for me this morning and through last night, the biggest thing for me is what in HE double hockey sticks is going on in Kitchener-Conestoga. Just think of the drama that took place in that riding over the weekend. Liberal candidate Joe Gowing boldly, no doubt about it, boldly and publicly posts on the social media platform X asking his NDP opponent to step down. Liberal Joe Gowing says it's the only way we can save the farmland. Polling shows that I'm in the lead. If you step down now and essentially get out of the way, I can win this riding and save the farmland. Well, that leads to a kerfuffle, to say the least. And what happens 24 hours after that? The Green candidate jumps behind the NDP candidate, and then Joe Gowing's car gets vandalized, showing the results of the 2018 election where he finished third to the NDP and the incumbent Conservative. And he was asked in this vandalism on his car to step aside now and do the right thing. Well, hang on a second, Kitchener-Conestoga. Joe Gowing was doing the right thing. His polling was accurate. He comes in a pretty strong second to Mike Harris Jr. in the riding. And if he had taken the NDP vote with him, the NDP and Liberal vote combined in Kitchener-Conestoga would have been enough to beat Mike Harris Jr. But Kitchener-Conestoga couldn't get out of its own way. They made a schmoz of it all. And the end result is Mike Harris Jr. returns for another term in Kitchener-Conestoga. Greater than 50% voter turnout in Kitchener-Conestoga. And with all of that turnout, all of that interest in the election, the riding still re-elects a representative of the government that is bankrolling the land assembly. Make it make sense to me. How many times have we heard about fighting for farmland and this land grab and how it's got to be stopped? 50+% turnout, and they re-elect a representative from the government that's bankrolling the land assembly. I got nothing for you, except that this is a really interesting result. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Just ahead of your 9:30 update, quickly we go to the phones. Marius, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Mike. I'm not going to say much about Doug Ford and them. They won. We all knew it. Great. I do want to ask you one question, and you don't have to answer if you don't like to. But what is the point of Mike Schreiner and the Greens? He's been at it for 15 years. Other than him just having a job, I don't see the point. He doesn't seem to have targets that he wants to hit to say, you know what, if I don't hit these targets, I'm going to just leave it. He's like the Utah Hockey Club. They just have to move cities all the time because nobody wants them, and it'll never matter.
Well, listen, I get where you're coming from, and trust me. Look, I'll start with this. The left side of the political spectrum in this country has got to amalgamate its feces. Like, enough of this, because they just continue to eat their own. So stop it. And I thought about that last night watching the results, and there's Mike Schreiner's 2 seats again. They once again thought they had a shot in Parry Sound, Muskoka. Didn't happen. I think he's an excellent man. I really do. So I would maybe suggest that Mike Schreiner can become the leader of the new Green DeLib party or something like that. I don't know, but I hear where you're coming from. 2 seats seems rather irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, doesn't it? Joe, I got about 30 seconds.
Praise the Lord. We're keeping the communists out of Queen's Park once again for another 4 years. Praise the Lord. And Ashland Clancy, congratulations. You're absolutely irrelevant again.
Well, okay. But she's a winner, which is more than you can say for the PC, NDP, or Liberal candidate in her riding. We keep talking about last night's results, this time with a former Ontario cabinet minister who joins us next on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. The morning after the Ontario election, it was a snap election. It was a brief campaign period, and the end result is nothing changes. Another majority for Ontario Premier Doug Ford's Progressive Conservatives. John Malloy is a former Ontario cabinet minister and also an assistant professor of public ethics and the director of the Centre for Public Ethics at Wilfrid Laurier University, Martin Luther University College. John, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. I'm surprised your musical intro wasn't Talking Heads, same as it ever was.
I started the show with Won't Get Fooled Again, so along a similar line, I think, but well played, sir. Well played. What are you thinking this morning, John, following what really seemed to be a pointless campaign? That's my assessment, but your thoughts?
Well, listen, I have two views on it. As someone interested in politics and the mechanics of politics, kudos to Doug Ford. That was a brilliant move to find that moment, and it really was a moment when he could capitalize on all the stars aligning with President Ford threatening tariffs, with the vacuum in Ottawa, all the crazy politics of the last few weeks. He was able to capitalize on it and get his third majority. So kudos to him from a political strategist point of view. As someone who thinks a little bit about our political system, I do worry about the cynicism of this past campaign. Premier Ford indicated, I think, as early as last June that he was looking to call an early campaign. He was looking for an excuse. He admitted privately, it got picked up, that he was actually cheering for Donald Trump to be president. So, I mean, this was just sort of a last-minute thing. He saw an opportunity and he jumped on it, and we had a campaign that I'm not exactly sure to maybe quote you what it was about. Tariffs and international issues tend to be at the federal government. I'm not exactly sure what he said he was going to do. I mean, he was looking for a strong mandate. I'm not sure to do what, because the closest he got to meeting President Trump was going to the White House and having the assistant to the assistant to the assistant to the assistant. So I'm not exactly sure what the campaign was about, and I fear it's going to make voters even more cynical.
That cynicism is something that I have absolutely noticed, John. It's palpable. A 45% voter turnout, which I'm amazed to have to say is better than last time. And when 45% is better, however marginally, that's still not a good thing. And I wonder how we go about reversing that trend. If not the cynicism, certainly the turnout. Are there levers we can pull here?
I'm not sure. I mean, part of it is having some policy debates about real issues. I remember once being at a conference or a seminar or something, and someone said, you want high voter turnout, suggests that you're going to, cut old age pension in half, or say you're going to get rid of it. And we all laughed, but that person had a point. If there were real choices, if there were competing visions for the province, we have a huge issue with health care. But really, what did all the parties offer? That they were going to help everyone find a doctor and invest more money. I was on your show a few weeks ago. I said that when I was first running in 2002, 2003. I mean, what exactly does that mean? What about some competing visions for the province, some competing ideas, some actual differentiation. We're going to go in this direction. The other party says, no, we're going to go in that direction, and start to have a vote that's about something.
Speaking of differentiation, John, it seems to me there is less and less, certainly amongst three of the main political parties, Liberal, MDP, and Green. Is it time for the tough conversation here on the left side of the political spectrum? We've got to come together, don't we?
I'm not sure that. Listen, I'm one of the little group that tried to persuade Mike Schreiner to run for leader of the Liberal Party. So I obviously see some ties to the Greens. As someone who worked with the New Democrats, I have many friends who are New Democrats and all that. I think there is a different view of the way the world works and the role of government, which is it would be very, very hard to paper over. I think someone who's a little bit of the center-right side of the Liberal Party and someone who's on the far left of the NDP don't really have much in common. But I think there's something's got to give, because I've never been a big proponent for this merging, but I think there's got to be more of a discussion about what are the challenges facing the province, and what's the different way that the progressive side is going to tackle it, because this let's all run to the center and promise that we're going to just invest more money and have more programs for every problem. It's not believable, and so you end up, I don't know, voting for Doug Ford because he says things like, "Did the cheese slip off the cracker?" He's sort of a folksy guy. Like, this is not the way to have elections or have policy discussions when you have not just the tariff threat, but an aging population, the rise of new technologies, huge changes in our international economic system, which are impacting Ontario. What's the future of our post-secondary education? I mean, these are big, serious issues, and it would be nice to have a politician say, elect me, and I'm going to do X, and another politician say, no, with greatest respect, that's wrong. We need to move in a different direction, and have voters decide. But I don't know. We all go back to 1988, which I'm old enough to remember, which was, should we have free trade or not? Wouldn't it be nice to have an election where those sorts of questions are on the table, where you actually could take a position and fight it out?
I couldn't agree more. I love that idea. And yes, we can romanticize the past a little bit, but I'm going even further back with one of my ideas this morning, John, to 1867, when neither of us were around, but when we began contesting elections under this first past the post system. May I impose on a little bit more of your time this morning? I'm up against the clock. Can you stay through this break with me?
Sure.
Thank you, John. John Malloy, former Ontario Cabinet Minister, and today the Director at the Centre for Public Ethics, Martin Luther University College at WLU in Waterloo. I want to talk about potential electoral reform, and John was a Cabinet Minister within the Ontario Liberal Party, which I described earlier as a bit of a dumpster fire right now. We'll talk about that too as we continue on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. John Malloy is a former Ontario Cabinet Minister with the Liberal Party. He is currently the Director at the Centre for Public Ethics, Martin Luther University College in Waterloo. John, I alluded to this before the break, and thank you very much for the extra time this morning. But I'm wondering, what I'm really having trouble taking these days is first past the post. And I can't help but wonder if some sort of change to our electoral system might reduce cynicism and actually bring about meaningful change when we go to elections.
Well, I mean, listen, there's a couple of responses to that. One is that those jurisdictions which don't have first past the post are not paradise. They are not areas that are not cynical, that don't have the same political problems that are facing it seems many Western jurisdictions. The other thing is, I've always had trouble getting my head around these types of changes that people bring in, because if you think about our system a little bit differently, and you think about the idea that a community gets together and decides who should be their representative, which means whoever gets the most votes gets to go down to Queen's Park and represent them. There's a certain logic to that. If I'm living in northern Ontario and in a small community, and all of a sudden, what's happening in terms of overall representation is being dictated by huge communities like Toronto or the GTA or even Waterloo Region, where there's tens of thousands of people who all decide that they're going to vote Conservative or NDP or Liberal or whatever, while my little community wants to go a different way. I mean, we've got to sort all that out, and I think this idea of representation is really, really important. I mean, I may have had honorable in front of my name and a person to drive me back and forth to Toronto, but when I went to Zares on Saturday, I got an earful from a whole bunch of people, and I had to listen to them because I represented them and I needed their votes and their support. And if I'm just a name on a list somewhere, I don't really have to listen to many people. So I'm always a little bit skeptical about the idea, but mainly for the first reason that changing the deck chairs in the Titanic doesn't necessarily solve the problem, because when we look at jurisdictions that have that system, they're facing big problems as well.
I think the Liberal Party here in Ontario generally is facing big problems, John, and continues to face big problems. I admire Bonnie Crombie's spirit last night when she declared this as some sort of win because the party returns to official party status. But it doesn't change the fact that even the leader couldn't win her seat in Mississauga. Where does the Ontario Liberal Party go from here?
Well, I listen, you can be glass half full or glass half empty. It got close to 30% of the vote, which is amazing, and maybe does support your idea of a change to the voting system. But throughout the province and the region, when you looked at the returns, the Liberals were started to be the party to beat, the party that was breathing down the neck of some of the other whoever won the seat. I think that's going to bode well for the party going forward in terms of attracting candidates for the next election. Getting party status is huge because you all of a sudden have a defined role in the legislature and on parliamentary committees, and perhaps just as important as that fact is that you get a budget as a party. You can do research. You can you're in a position to better hold the government to account. And listen, Doug Ford is going into his third term, and yes, he is a political genius, a strategic genius, but the fact is, governments in their third term, the wheels always start to come off. It doesn't matter whether you're Liberal, Conservative, NDP, or whoever. That's where the problems start, and I think you're going to see Doug Ford facing problems, a whole range of problems, some of them external, like tariffs, but a lot of them internal. And I think the Liberals could be in a good position to capitalize on that. They'll have that platform in the legislature, and they will have a little bit of street cred in terms of recruiting supporters and candidates. The fact that Bonnie Crombie doesn't have a seat, that's huge. She's going to have to demonstrate that she can continue on in that role without a seat in the legislature. So the challenge is with her, but I've got to tell you, the Liberals I know are exhausted. They don't want another leadership. Maybe I'm wrong, but the ones I know, I think would be quite happy to not have to gather and go through all this again.
Yeah, certainly I can understand why they would be fatigued by it all. John, really appreciate you making time for the show this morning. It's great to get your perspective on these things. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mike.
John Malloy is a former Ontario cabinet minister under that Liberal banner. He's the director at the Centre for Public Ethics now at Martin Luther University College in Waterloo. I recognize, and John, of course, makes a great point when he says those jurisdictions in the world where a different system than first past the post exists have their share of problems. Fair enough. What I'm saying is we have, for almost 160 years now, been doing the same ding-dang thing over and over and over again in elections with this first past the post. And you heard John talk about 30% of the popular vote in Ontario went Liberal, and yet they end up with 14 seats. Less than 50% of the popular vote in Ontario went Conservative, and they hold all the power. I read with great interest a story in the Globe and Mail earlier this week about the recent elections in Germany. And look, again, you want to talk about a jurisdiction with its problems, for sure, and the disaffection that has led to a further right-leaning coalition government in Germany than they are accustomed to. Fair enough. But what struck me from that story was this idea that if you meet the threshold of 5% of the popular vote, you get some level of representation within that parliament. And I think that is a direction we need to consider, proportional representation. Otherwise, Greens will continue to hold absolutely no sway. And a government can be elected with all the power despite having less than half the votes, half of the popular support. I am more than ready, and I intend on making this my mission. I will continue to talk to people far smarter than me, but I want to push for electoral reform because I am exhausted. I was this close. I was this close to not even casting a ballot under this antiquated system yesterday. Of course I did, because I believe that is my role. That is my responsibility within a democracy. But in this democracy, I think we have to change the electoral system. Your thoughts always welcome on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
CKGL AM Kitchener.
A Rogers radio station.
570 News.
Just ahead of our 10 a.m. update, we squeeze in more thoughts from you on the show. Ranger Joe, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good. You know, Mike, with the election, I can honestly tell you, I voted NDP because I was always a fan of Howard Hampton and Jack Layton. Really nice guys, you know. And I always considered the NDP to be like the working man's representative, you know. And that's what I did anyway, Mike. And you know what's funny? With Doug Ford, I mean, let's be honest. He did some hanky-panky there with the green belt in the Toronto area with all the developers, and he was also involved in the land grab here with the farmland. And people were willing to overlook all that stuff, just like Trump. The U.S. voters, the same thing. I mean, the guy should be in prison, and yet a lot of people voted for him. Like, I just can't figure this nonsense out, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I hear where you're coming from, Joe, and this is what really surprises me, especially in Kitchener-Conestoga, the results of this election. But here we are. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Friday mornings offer us the opportunity to deliver on something that you asked for on the show. You said you wanted to hear more often from our locally elected representatives. We have them on quite a bit. There are a number, and I should recognize and acknowledge this morning. Many of our local councillors are more than willing to have a conversation on the show about various issues, but you had asked for something specific and directed, and so every Friday morning at 10, we have a segment called Council Chambers, which allows us to do a deeper dive into issues and to one of the many neighborhoods in our community. Today, that happens to be Cambridge. Ward 4's councillor there is Ross Earnshaw, who joins us on Council Chambers. Ross, good morning.
Good morning, Mike, and happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you, too. Hey, how about this? Can we add to it happy last day of February, Ross?
Yes, indeed. It is the last day of February.
Bring on March. Bring on better weather, please, and thank you.
Yeah, spring is coming.
Okay, let's dive into some of the issues in Cambridge right now, Ross. One of them being the city's decision to stop using X as a platform to share information with the public. What do you think of this?
Well, let me start by saying, Mike, that you would be hard-pressed to find somebody less qualified to answer that question than me. I studiously avoid social media, but This decision, which was announced on other social media platforms and through the media in general by the city, is one that was reached by our communications people and what we call our corporate leadership team under the guidance of the city manager. And obviously, given my lack of expertise, I have to respect the expertise they bring to these topics. I think the announcement they made was transparent and it explained the rationale. So I'm supportive of it, if only because I don't have a fond thought about our friend Mr. Musk, who I believe is behind that particular platform. So that's about all I can say, given my lack of qualifications. But I think it's a decision that's well taken and well thought out. I notice as well that other municipalities and organizations around the province are having similar discussions. So I think we're on the right page here.
I have to say, Ross, when I first heard the decision and I received the media release from the city, I thought, well, shouldn't the city be in every possible place to share information as widely as possible? And X then, of course, would be included in that. But the more I thought about it, and, touching on what you allude to with not only the owner of said platform, but the complete cesspool that it's become, maybe it's not in the best interests of a municipality to even participate there, because by being there, you bring people to it, and who knows what else they see and what other mis or disinformation they're exposed to while on the platform.
I think you've just expressed a lot of the rationale that went into the decision, and again, expressing my lack of expertise, it's one with which I agree. That's exactly the way I see it, and I know your definition of X as something of a cesspool, but I think the whole social media business is one in which misinformation can run rampant and can cause problems that I think are best avoided, and this is one way to avoid some of those problems.
Is that why you studiously avoid social media, Ross?
that plus my being a Luddite when it comes to technical stuff, yes.
I don't know. I get your newsletter. You're doing pretty okay with that stuff. Listen, I'm close to a Luddite, but I can't do so. I'm more of a Luddite than you. I can't do a newsletter, so you're a step ahead of me on that one.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for the kudos.
Something that came to council this week, you were able to hear from our good friend Donna Gravel. Her and I go back a long time when she used to work at this radio station and represents Doctors for Cambridge, and I know she made a presentation at council. What can the city do, Ross, to attract more doctors to the community?
Yes, well, Donna made an excellent report, and as you know, she's been heading up Doctors for Cambridge for, I think, over 20 years, so she's got some experience. She reminded us during her report that Cambridge was one of the first cities to develop a strategy for attracting doctors, and Doctors for Cambridge is a result of that strategy. And before we go too far down the road of saying we're not attracting enough doctors, part of her report was that we are, in fact, attracting about 4 or 5 a year, but that influx is merely offsetting the number of retirements, so we're, as she put it, not getting ahead of the game. To give credit where it's due, her efforts include making outreach calls to doctors who have expressed an interest in coming to Cambridge in order to ascertain their interests, their family status, what they might like to see in and around the community. And then when she does a tour, she's sure to show the doctors those aspects of our community that are most attractive to them, and in order to make the best possible showing. So she speaks of housing and schools and recreational facilities and things like that. In her report, she mentioned other incentives that other communities are offering that at present Cambridge is not. So to answer your question, we could consider, I guess, providing housing, providing vehicles, paying for club memberships, providing signing bonuses. These are some of the efforts that other communities have engaged in that we have not so far. But all of those take additional funding, and one of the aspects of her report that I particularly picked up on and about which I asked a question was, well, what is your source of budget? Because there were a couple of things that she identified that that could be undertaken, but that were not undertaken because of a lack of funding. So I think the fundamental answer to your question is to find other sources or make available other sources of funding for her organization and increase the ability that they have to pursue alternatives to or additional options for attracting doctors here.
Ross Earnshaw is the Ward 4 councillor in the city of Cambridge. He joins us on Council Chambers this morning. We get to do a deeper dive into the city of Cambridge and the goings on there. And of course, as a municipal councillor, Ross and his colleagues on council will have to continue, maybe build on a relationship with our new provincial government because it's the same as the old one. And how about that snow event that was in place for like 2 weeks in the community? Are we doing a good enough job at clearing away the snow after a storm? We'll continue our conversation with Councillor Earnshaw here on Council Chambers this morning on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Fridays also mean a chance to do a deeper dive into one of the neighborhoods in our vast region. Today, the focus is on Cambridge with our Council Chambers segment, and Ross Earnshaw represents Ward 4 in the city of Cambridge and joins us on Council Chambers this morning. I know, Ross, that the provincial government hasn't changed after last night's election, but also that municipal councillors build relationships with the MPPs in their community and other ministers within the government, perhaps. How do you, as a municipal councillor, go about building, or in this case, maybe maintaining relationships with the provincial government?
Well, let me start by offering my congratulations to both of our re-elected incumbent local MPPs, Brian Riddell and Jess Dixon. And as you have correctly pointed out, Mike, because they are coming back into office, re-elected, we've already established a good working relationship with both of them. They're very supportive of the city of Cambridge, individually and collectively in Queen's Park. And I think several of the municipal councillors have forged something close to personal relationships with those two representatives. So your question would have been much harder to answer, of course, if there had been new faces in those positions. But we have established a good working relationship with both of them, and I think we'll just build on that and continue to maintain good relations going forward.
I know, Ross, that Cambridge wasn't alone in this, but it struck me that it was just, I think Wednesday, maybe yesterday, I'm pretty sure it was Wednesday, either way, that the snow events were lifted. Waterloo, Kitchener, similar to Cambridge, but almost 2 weeks after the big storms we had. And I know it was storms, plural, and that they were indeed big, but a snow event being in place for almost 2 weeks is certainly a long time. Can the city do better when it comes to clearing snow after storms?
Well, I've given some thought to this because thankfully you provided me with your question in advance. So I think you've identified that this was something of an unusual event, at least in the context of recent winters and heavy snowfall. So a bit unusual. But the answer, of course, is yes. But along with that yes is there's a significant cost. So let me explain what I mean. The staffing and equipment for snow removal, or for that matter for grass cutting in the summer, cannot be planned on the basis of peak demand. That would be too expensive. We'd have an unnecessary number of staff, some idle equipment. And so we have to balance the peak demand against the sort of more normal situation. And this was an abnormal situation. In order to do that balance, we take the personnel and equipment that we have and we apply a protocol. And for those who are wondering what it is and want to explore it more closely, it's on the City of Cambridge website under, I think it's under snow plowing and or a heading like that. And it explains that we first attack the main thoroughfares, then the lesser streets, cover the bridges over the 401, ramps to the 401, sort of the key components of travel. And then as time and equipment permit, we move on to smaller neighborhoods, cul-de-sacs, sidewalks, and so forth. That same site on the website also provides an interactive map that shows the sidewalks that are the responsibility of the city and those that are the responsibility of citizens. And so a citizen wondering about a pile of snow at the end of his particular driveway should be able to determine with reasonable accuracy when it will be addressed. Now, internally at the city, we have received, throughout the course of this snow event, an almost daily update from the operations manager, so that we're pretty well informed about where they are in the protocol that I described. And in my view, they did an excellent job having regard to the limitations of the equipment and manpower they have available. They followed the protocol to a T. They responded to emergency situations with alacrity, and I think they deserve a big round of applause, really, although I know that there are individuals in the city who are dissatisfied with the speed with which their streets were cleared. So kudos to the team. I think they did the best they could in the circumstances, and although, again, the answer to your question is yes, I think the cost would be prohibitive and the taxpayers would not stand for it.
Yeah, that's always the devil in the details, isn't it, Ross? We want our street plowed yesterday, but I think sometimes we forget that, sure, you could have that, but it's going to cost you this many more dollars every year.
Yeah, can I add one other thing? That is that throughout those reports that we were getting, it was evident to me that a good part of the delay in clearing some streets was the fact that the citizenry were ignoring the edict to not park on the streets. And it was so problematic in some areas that our bylaw compliance team were literally following the plows around and issuing violation tickets to cars they encountered that were parked in the street and that were blocking the way. And there's a cynical part of me that thinks that the same people who are complaining about the slow removal of snow are the ones that leave their cars in the way. So if you can get that message out there, I'd appreciate it.
I think that cynicism may be well placed, sir. I think it may well be placed. Ross, great to get you on the show this morning. Thanks very much for making time for Council Chambers.
It's always a pleasure, Mike. Have a great day and a nice weekend.
You as well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ross Earnshaw is the Ward 4 councillor in Cambridge, joins us for Council Chambers this Friday morning. Every Friday at 10, a different councillor from a different area of our community so we can all better understand the heck is going on out there, because it's a big region and we try to cover it as best we can. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Call the Mike Farwell Show now.
519-570-2545.
1-800-570-5715.
And star 570.
This girl is on fire, says Andre about Ms. Fife, who won another election in Waterloo. And deservedly so, in my humble estimation. I still remain a little bit surprised that the absentee PC candidate lives in Oakville, ran in Waterloo, placed second. But I guess that speaks to other things we've talked about regarding that provincial election, doesn't it? The Liberal brand, I would say, is tainted, very much tainted. This is 3 straight dismal results for the Ontario Liberals. And the Green Party candidate essentially bowed out. So Catherine Fife didn't need the additional votes / support. She won rather handily again, but she has been an excellent representative for Waterloo. I think she's been an excellent representative for our entire community about doing politics the right way. But anyway, Andre wanted to send that song out to the victorious Catherine Fife here on your All Request Friday this morning. All right, Fridays are also game day, baby. Kitchener Rangers take on the Sarnia Sting tonight. We want to make sure you are as ready as you can be for that game. So the coaches show, the other coaches show, both coming up before 11. This is the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It is a Kitchener Rangers goal song on a Kitchener Rangers game day. Sarnia Sting in town tonight to take on your Rangers, who have won 3 in a row. And as we do every Friday morning at this time, we have a chat with the Rangers head coach, UC Ahokas, who joins us for the Coaches Show. Good morning, UC.
Good morning.
Have you caught up on your sleep? Is the jet lag all gone now?
Yeah, I think. I was so short time away, so I didn't really get caught. So, but all good.
Good.
All ready for the game.
Glad to hear that. When you look back on Tuesday night's game, UC, you were down 1-0 after the first period. Once you got the goal in the second, things really started rolling. Did you run into a hot goalie, or did your team just take a little while to get started on Tuesday?
No, I thought first period we had plenty of chances to score. Their goalie made some big saves, and but all in all, I liked 60 minutes. We played well, and when we went after their D, and we got good forechecks and great goals after that. So we were working because Guelph it's a working team, and all in all, we matched and even beat their work ethic. And after that, usually good things happen.
You got great goals. That might be the understatement of the year, you see, because when I came back to work on Wednesday morning, all anybody wanted to talk about was Jack Pridham's Michigan goal. What did you think of that when you saw it behind the bench?
Well, that was a good goal. Good goal, but there was a good forecheck before that. And then he had Pridham had plenty of time. It's, of course, great skill to do that, But yeah, it's, I guess these days those guys, they practice it a lot, and then all in all, it's only one goal. But it's a good that he scored that, and happy for him. But yeah, I'm a little bit of old school, so I'm okay. You do that, but for me it's one goal, and he took advantage of that, so that the goalie and their D weren't ready for it. So. It's, of course, you need skill to do that.
Pridham has been playing consistently on a line with Humphreys and Swick. You didn't start that way on Tuesday, but you went back to it. Is this group one that you think is going to stay together because of what they've been producing?
I'm not saying still. Like right now they're doing good, and there's some chemistry there, and we just wanted to see a little different options, and we have nine games left, so we'll be probably rotating a lot of the forwards. But that's one line for sure that I think can work well. And but yeah, it's not still 9 games before the playoffs, so a lot of things can happen. So we go game by game.
You got Luke Ellenis back on Tuesday, UC, after a 17-game absence, and it looked like he hadn't missed a step, really. What does a player like Luke Ellenis do for your lineup?
Well, he brings the physicality. He's really good in the boards. He wins battles. All in all, his energy and just how he plays, like those are the big things for us. And he goes to the net, and like the goal, what he scored, I think there was a good skill there. And when he battles hard, he's not a easy player to defend.
Sarnia Sting are in town tonight, and there's no easy game in this league. Sarnia is fighting for a playoff position. What do you have to do to be successful against the Sting?
Well, we have to understand they're fighting for their lives. So they're a hard-working team. They forecheck hard, so we have to have good breakouts. We have to be in good spots, and we have to be smart with the puck. And all in all, we have to match their work. Same thing, they're a hard-working team, so you have to match their work and play the right way, and then you have a chance. I think we lost our last game against them, and I didn't like our effort that game, and now should be way different and when they're coming to odd, and you have to know when you're playing at the odd that the Rangers will be coming hard. So I want to see the effort and the forecheck and the work. Those are the big things, big keys for today.
At this point of the season, you see, with 9 games to go, are you looking for the line combinations and you know the players that you want to have on game 1 of the playoffs? Are you looking for them to maybe, show you what they've got for those roles when the playoffs roll around?
I think we're going to still be. We have a lot of forwards, so we'll be rotating, and of course we can try different things. And but yeah, we'll be rotating that because we want to go far in the playoffs, and you need everybody in it, and so we have guys, and everybody's ready when the playoffs start. So not really. And of course, if some lines go well, we'll keep them. But I think we'll still we have plenty of time to a little bit try different things also.
It's a game day in Kitchener. We always love them. We'll see you at the rink later today, UC. Thank you.
Thank you.
UC Ahokas, head coach of the Kitchener Rangers, joins us every Friday morning at this time for the Coaches Show. I remember, now that UC brings it up, that last game versus Sarnia, where the Rangers lost, and he was not happy with the team's effort. So they've got a little something to show the coach tonight as they go for a fourth straight win. After tonight's game on home ice, it's off to Owen Sound for a Saturday night at the Bayshore, because Saturday nights are all right for the scenic city. That is our weekly chat with UC Ahokas, the head coach, former coach in this league, and now our broadcast colleague on Rangers hockey here on 570 News Radio, Paul Fixter. The other Coaches Show is coming up right after this on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Fridays are hockey days in Kitchener. And from the Coaches Show with UC Ahokas, we go to the other Coaches Show with the coach himself and our color commentator, Paul Fixter, ahead of tonight's Rangers Sting game. Fixie, good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
I'm going to break this to you as gently as I can. And I acknowledge it's only my prediction, but we're going to Flint in the first round, Fixie.
Oh, I looked at the standings this morning, and there hasn't been a lot of sting in the Sarnia Hockey Club of late, Mike, going one win in their last 10 when they were right in that spot where they could, finish sixth. They're closer to finishing 10th than they are sixth.
Exactly. They got cold, those darn Sting, at the wrong time. Owen Sound and especially Sault Ste. Marie have gotten hot. And then what we talked about, and this is why I bring it up, when we were trying to figure out, what's the 3-6 matchup going to be? Because the Rangers almost certainly finishing third, so they'll face the sixth place team. And we thought, hey, maybe, just maybe, there's a chance for the Sting to overtake Flint. They had 3 games left against each other, and one of those got played last night, and Flint won it. So it's looking more and more like we're headed stateside for round number 1, my friend.
It is. It definitely is. And Flint's not going to be an easy matchup either, Mike. That's a good hockey club. We can talk about that as it gets closer, but that's going to be a good first-round series.
Couldn't agree more on both counts. We will talk about that more as it gets closer, because right now we're kind of just guessing at the way the standings look. But let's talk about the Kitchener Rangers, Paul. And I was impressed with Tuesday's win for a couple of reasons, one of which was you're coming off big wins, emotional wins on the weekend over really strong clubs in Barrie and London, and then you're facing the last place team, but you kind of showed no mercy. You went out there and you took care of business against Guelph on Tuesday.
They certainly did, and I think the goaltender Jovanovski was a big reason that Kitchener was actually down in the game 1-0, out shooting Guelph 16-8 in the first period. Jovanovski was outstanding, and then he could only sustain so much before the Rangers unleashed 6 unanswered goals. And Kitchener certainly took control of the game. I think Kitchener was in control of the entire game, really, Mike. Even when they were down, they were the much better hockey club. The power play got a couple of goals. Jackson Parsons was good in net again. The depth scoring showed on this team, and you get the return of Luke Ellenis. So there's a lot of positives came out of that game, including the fact that there was no letdown, and now they're on a 3-game winning streak.
You talk about the depth on the team, Paul, and this is something that continues to impress me. We've talked almost all season about the number of bodies that are around, but I kind of picture the coaching staff with the Kitchener Rangers being like, mad scientists in a lab before every game, trying to figure out which of their pieces, which always seems to contribute, is going to be in the lineup on any given night. And I know you would have been listening when I talked to UC Ahokas a moment ago, he's not tipping his hand on anything, but seems quite content, even when the playoffs roll around, that, listen, we're just going to go with the lineup each night that we think gives us the best chance to win.
Yeah, I thought really they would get into more of a set lines, or really a set lineup, I should say, not lines, but set lineup as the playoffs approach. And now we're getting closer. We're under that 10-game mark. It's interesting that he's just going to continue to do what they've done and interchange parts. I would like to see more of a set lineup, and you go with that. And of course, injuries or poor play can dictate if somebody's in or out. But to be interchanging game by game in the playoffs, you don't see that whole lot, Mike.
I was wondering. Sorry, go ahead.
A situation where you run, you don't flip flop goalies. They always say if you have two goalies, that means you don't have one. So I think you want to be the same with your lines and your lineups. But I don't coach anymore.
I wondered the same thing, which is why I brought it up with UC. It occurred to me to ask at the end there. But yeah, he seems quite content to do it this way. And all I keep thinking back on is the Edmonton Oilers. I believe it was triple overtime. Peter Klima hadn't skated in how many periods, and they throw him out there. He had the freshest legs. Maybe that works for the Rangers in the playoffs at some point. Hayden Ellis has got fresh legs, and he comes in and plays hero or something like that.
Well, and he got a beautiful goal the other night.
Did he ever?
He's generated some offensive chances. He hasn't generated a whole lot goals-wise, but he gets some good chances. But, there's good players sitting in the wings. Evan Hedrick sitting there still, and there's other players that certainly can come into the lineup. And they've had on the defense with McNeil and Bilecki in and out. So those are two pretty good defensemen as well. So it'll be interesting to see, Mike. It's funny that UC reflected on the last game, and I certainly remember, Kitchener had the 2-0 lead after the first period, gave up 2 goals in the third period to blow that game, quite honestly, and lose 3-2. And I learned some new Finnish swear words that night when I went down to do my post-game, I'm pretty sure, when I walked through the hallway by the dressing room. Wow, that was not a happy group that night.
I had to chuckle a little bit when UC did the same thing, reflecting on the last game and said he wasn't happy with the effort. I, too, remember the end of that game, and you were downstairs and knew better the reaction of the staff from a lackluster performance on the part of the team. So they have to respond for that tonight, look for a 4th straight win. I said this to UC as well, Paul. I don't know what it's been like in your world, but the moment I came back to work on Wednesday morning, honest to goodness, every person I ran into here in the halls at the radio station, how about that goal by Jack Pridham? Somebody scored a Michigan last night. It was the talk of this radio station, and I think the talk of the town.
Well, it's funny, when I get home after doing our postgame, I typically get home in time to watch the local CTV news. And even Tony Grace, who was the anchor that night, was talking about it when he did the highlights of the Rangers game. So it is a special goal, no question about it. I had some friends at the game who were sitting at the far end, and they couldn't appreciate it as much as the people that were close. I think it was Joe who called and said he was sitting within 20 feet of it. But it's a special thing, Mike. It's not easy to do, no question about it. It's a high-skilled act by a player, no question about that. But I like what UC said. He said, I'm a little bit old school, which tells me he would rather see a shot off the pads rebound goal than something like that.
Well, and it struck me, though, too, because I picked up on the same. But even while acknowledging the skill of the goal, UC points out it started with a strong forecheck, though.
It did start with a strong forecheck, which created the turnover, and then Pridham was smart enough to sense that there was no defender and the goalie had pulled away from the near post. But, Mike, if UC is old school, what does that make me, like grandfather school? There's quite an age difference between. I always considered myself old school. I thought he was a little bit more modern, but I love that he referred to himself as old school because I still believe in old school. There's a lot of good came out of the old school.
Grandpa School with Paul Fixter. That's what we're calling it from now on. Fixie, rest your old bones. We got a long day ahead of us, including Rangers talk after the game. I'm looking forward to seeing you at the rink.
All right, Mike. See you then.
Paul Fixter, the other coaches show. Paul's our color commentator, and he's older school than the head coach, UC Ahokas, but he's a great guy. Brings some, we got into stories again on Tuesday night. Oh my, well, we didn't. Paul did. You just bring up the right name, And in this case, it happened to be Rio Grande Valley and the Killer Bees that he used to coach. And then Fixie went off into Fixie Storyland. And that is the magic of Rangers talk. It really is. We've gone through Patrick Waugh stories before, Joe Sakic stories before. Trust me, it's worth your time. And I hope you call in and participate in it after the game tonight. So Paul and I will get things started with the pregame show at 6:30 tonight. Everything you need to know before the game, including the fixes in for City Cabs when Paul can correctly predict some things that are going to happen in the game. We'll have all the action versus the Sting, and then we'll open up the phone lines and go deep into the night with Rangers talk, where we can hear from you and you can hear Fixie's stories. It's the place to be for Kitchener Rangers hockey, 570 News Radio. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. We are going to get you an update from the 570 News Center, and then our Friday 4 roundtable is gathering to talk about the results of last night's election. A couple of candidates locally switching teams late in the game. And should we revoke Wayne Gretzky's citizenship? All of that coming up with the Friday 4. After this on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Every Friday morning from 11 until noon, we invite some guests from around our community to join us and reflect on the week's big stories. And not much to talk about this week at all, so it's going to be pretty boring. I'm kidding. I mean, the election itself, we could probably do the entire 60 minutes on. But I'm very pleased to be joined around the virtual table this morning by Caitlin Kilgore, who's the co-owner of Dream Team Video Productions. Caitlin, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. Good morning, Janice.
Janice Jim is also with us, Vice President of Cycle Waterloo Region. Good morning, Janice.
Good morning, Mike.
And I think we're just going to reconnect with John Hendry, who is a retired public school board trustee. We'll wait for John to get connected here. I'm starting to see him. Look at that. John gets help from the tech expert in the home. Just so happens to be his lovely wife. Mr. Hendry, good morning, sir.
Good morning. Sorry, I'm technologically challenged.
That makes two of us. If I didn't have people over here, and by people I mean Devin Robertson, I would be lost. So it's good to see you. You're here just in time, and thank you.
Thanks, man.
Caitlin, let's start with you on the results of last night's election and tell us how you're feeling today. Third straight majority for Doug Ford and the Progressive Conservatives.
I mean, we say I'm surprised, but not at the same time. Looking at past voter turnouts and how things have played out, it was kind of, we knew maybe like this was most likely the possibility. So surprised, disappointed. The amount of voters who didn't turn out, especially the amount that did register and never showed, is really disappointing to see, especially in the climate we live in that is very politically driven, especially with everything that's going on with the cost of living, with our healthcare, with our education, and the amount we see of all these people online fighting and arguing about things. Where's the voters? And I think that is the one thing that surprised me the most. Wasn't necessarily the end result. It was, where is everybody? Where is it? And where are the numbers of showing? I haven't looked yet. Where are the regions and areas we're not getting the votes? Where's the age groups and everything as well? And I think these are just things we're really going to have to look into for future elections as well. It's voter turnout. It is absolutely disgusting how low, less 45%. That just mind-boggling to me.
Healthcare is a mess. Housing is a mess. Post-secondary education is struggling, to say the least. And I think you touch on something there, Caitlin. You would have thought that more people would have been engaged to do something about those issues. Instead, we have the same government that's been in power for the last 7 years, and if not contributed to the mess, certainly didn't fix any of those messes. So we'll see. Janice, your thoughts this morning after the expected result last night?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Caitlin's saying. What do we need to do to get people to come out to vote? Like you said, all the issues that Ontario is facing, you would have thought that this would motivate people to come out to vote, and it didn't. And this is probably partially why Doug Ford called the election, to take advantage of the winter climate, the difficulties of all the people having to get out to vote, and then also the less advanced polling days. There's 3 compared to the 10 that are usual, and then the shortened cycle and preparations. Elections Canada was scrambling to hire and train people, so there's a lot of issues at the polling stations. And yeah, like voter engagement is completely down. People don't want to talk, open their doors in the winters. People don't want to go out and volunteer in the winter. So I think Ford is just counting on all those factors and to quietly sneak in another majority, which is upsetting. It's just worried about what's going to happen in the next 4 years.
Strategically speaking, it was almost the stuff of genius on the part of Doug Ford. Mad genius, perhaps, but it worked out perfectly with the winter election, how bad the winter happened to be, the lower turnout, et cetera, et cetera. John, what do you make of where we're at in provincial politics?
Well, I think, Mike, I have a different spin on things. I think from what I've heard on the street and leading up to the election, that the other parties misunderstood, I think, the what was really on people's minds. And Donald Trump is what's on their mind. And quite honestly, Doug Ford was really the only candidate that I saw, anyway, that appeared to have the strength to be able to handle and guide us through that. And I think when the others tried to change it to other issues, which are obviously issues, it didn't resonate with the people. The people are concerned about Donald Trump, and clearly, Doug Ford is the leader that I believe that will be able to guide us through that. I think the people that don't vote clearly made a vote. They chose not to vote, and they have that right to do that. And so I don't really buy the fact that the lower turnout is going to have a lot to do with it, because I think a lot of people who didn't vote probably would have voted for a selection of parties. So it's not as if the people that didn't vote were Liberal or NDP. I think they were everything. And by not voting, by choosing not to vote, you made a choice to cast a ballot, a non-ballot, but nonetheless a ballot.
I think that's something I'd like to dig into a little bit more here, because I was giving a lot of thought to since the last provincial election that had 44% turnout. We get marginally better at 45 this time around, but it's not nearly enough. And we have a system in this country, provincially and federally, where the party that holds all the power can do so with less than half the votes. And that, to me, is as wrong can be. So I am all in right now, as of this morning, on electoral reform. I think we need to make each ballot count a little bit more. Caitlin, thoughts? Would electoral reform maybe be something that gets people more engaged in the process?
I think so, especially when we're looking at population growth and change in different areas. Even specifically where I'm living now in Listowel in North Perth, that is a giant geographical area. Population-wise, not so much. So there's a whole lot of region to cover, a lot of different issues, a lot of different sectors, but we're all over the place. And it's really hard when a lot of that focus is going to go to our bigger towns and to maybe the smaller cities that we're a part of. So for us here, we're connected to Stratford. So we're going to see a lot of those programs and a lot of that money go towards those areas. And we're kind of the second thought. And we see that even now, losing routes on our local transit that we just started. And now not having the funding even for that within our own rural communities. But yeah, we are booming. We are expanding vastly here with commercial businesses, with new local businesses, with residential like crazy. But there's no other health. There's no new healthcare coming in. There's very little schools being built. That takes a lot of time and funding. And I think we really definitely need to, because counting one vote in an area like this compared to when I was voting in the city growing up feels very different. I feel like it's more where I am now. I have to vote strategically and less for who I think is the appropriate candidate for me and for my region and for my area and the people within our community.
Maybe this leads into what we saw happen kind of organically during the campaign here in the region, where we had two Green candidates essentially drop out late in the campaign and say, go vote for the NDP candidate. Maybe we're already trying some of that here. We'll explore it further with our Friday 4 roundtable this morning. Caitlin Kilgore, Janice Jim, and John Hendry are with us on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. With us on the Friday 4 this morning, Janice Jim, John Hendry, and Caitlin Kilgore. Janice, I'll start with you on this one, and I think it's connected to where we left off the conversation in the first segment around the idea of electoral reform, maybe at minimum cooperation. And I guess we saw some of that in this provincial election, at least locally, when the Green candidates in both Kitchener-Conestoga and Waterloo essentially dropped out at the 11th hour and said, we're endorsing the NDP candidate in our riding. They still showed up on the ballot, and I don't know how much of an impact it had because it was so late in the campaign, but nonetheless, that's what happened. What do you make of the local Greens throwing their support behind the local NDP, Janice?
I think these are progressive people that are tired of seeing like the left split hurt the vote outcome, and the PC is always sneaking in. And they decided to stand up and do something about it. So I really respect them for doing that. No matter how successful or unsuccessful it was, they chose themselves to make this decision to support who they thought was best suited for the community, who represents the values in the community that they wanted to champion. So I really applaud them for doing that. But yeah, it definitely shows you that we need electoral reform. People feel like their voices are not being heard, their votes not being counted appropriately, and something needs to be done.
I struggle with the timing of it, to be honest. I've heard the argument that it's never too late to do the right thing, and I suppose that's fair. But in this case, you had a party that you made a commitment to, you had volunteers that you made a commitment to, you had voters who you had already appealed to for votes, and then you say, you know what, I want this candidate to win instead. Maybe, Janice, do you think we can have the conversation between now and the next election so that instead of doing it this way, we're coming into the campaign where people have a clearer understanding of their choices?
Yeah, I would say so. In Catherine Fife's article or interview with you, she mentioned that this would be an issue that she wanted to look at. Definitely more organizing beforehand than a last minute, last ditch effort would work better. And yeah, it's really time for us to examine, as parties and party leaders, examine what could be done to cooperate for Canada, like the name of that group.
John Hendry, you've got some experience in municipal politics as a former school board trustee. What do you think of a couple of local Greens throwing their support behind the NDP at the last minute?
Well, if I were a supporter of the Green Party, I would find it offensive because for some of what you've said, I mean, they've been sold on the vision of the Green Party, and each party finds fault with the others, and then to at the last minute turn around and tell them the voter to go and support the party that they've been running against, which they have. I would be very disappointed, to be honest with you. I think, if you're going to drop out, drop out. But you shouldn't be channeling people or attempting to channel people to another party that clearly you've campaigned against, whether it's the PCs or the Liberals. So, no, I don't agree with that. I never agree with that. I do agree that there's probably a time for electoral reform. I think for a number of reasons, I would also, as part of electoral reform, I'd like to see the government investigate the Australian way of doing things. That it is not only your right to vote, but it's your obligation. And if you don't vote, you're penalized. And I think that's maybe a heavy-handed way to get people to vote, but clearly it would bring forward their choices, no matter which party or independent they vote for. They're forced to make a decision, and they're forced to participate and take advantage of the freedoms that they've got.
When you say, John, that you think there is room for electoral reform, I certainly agree with that as well. I mean, since 1867 in this country, we've been running on first past the post. I know there are other systems that are imperfect, but I'm exhausted by this imperfect system. And I think it's high time we got something different in here. Is there a ranked ballot proportional representation idea that you would support?
I would. I just going back to my days on the school board. Obviously, I would like to look into or read or study the various choices that you have, but certainly there's got to be another way. Whether it's better or not better, we don't know. But unless we start looking into it and doing a little research, we'll probably never know. But if it gives the community and the constituents the feeling that their vote is being counted and it is of value, that it's a good idea. I think take a look at whether the results come out are any different. I mean, clearly that's who knows. But you'd also encourage parties to campaign in a much different way. So
I love the idea of voters feeling that the ballot they cast has a little bit more meaning behind it. Caitlin, let's swing it over to you. And I'll just add on the Australian model. While I've been in the past fond of mandatory voting, the flip side of that is you get people who show up and just mark an X because they have to, without really putting much thought into it. And I'm not sure I want Joe Moron next door helping decide my next government. If that's just me, I'm a little bit of a cynic. Caitlin, what do you think of the local Greens that threw their support behind the NDP at the last minute?
I really kind of like both what John and Janice had to say, seeing both sides of it. One thing that I really like is just we have so many different parties. They are not completely opposites in complete forms of different things. There's a lot of things that they want to focus on. There's a lot of similarities, but we're all being driven to the point now where it's just you're completely one side or you're completely the opposite. If you're voting this way, then you're completely against everything else that that the other parties have. And that never makes sense to me. When we have so many strong parties, we don't have one, we don't have two. Right now we're 4, I think. We're even growing even more. But when you see different politicians and leaders of parties working together on different things, that is something that I think is quite Canadian in politics. But pulling out and then putting your support to another party at the last minute, if I was someone supporting the Green Party, I would be quite confused and a little upset as well, because I've put my time, maybe even money behind this, and this is where my heart lays, and this is what I believe and want. And now that option is no longer there.
Let's use this.
But
no, I think you're on to something with that, Caitlin. And I hope we can use this as the motivation to make this cooperation occur at the beginning of a campaign, because I think voters deserve that clear choice for sure. Caitlin Kilgore, Janice Chim, and John Hendry are with us on the Friday 4 Roundtable this morning. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. The day after the provincial election, we've been able to discuss and dissect that with our guests on the Roundtable this morning. There's been talk now about having Elon Musk's Canadian citizenship revoked. What about Wayne Gretzky's? And no more X for the city of Cambridge. Should other municipalities follow suit? We continue the conversation on the Friday 4 Roundtable this morning on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Fridays also mean our Friday 4 roundtable with some invited guests to share their perspective on the week's big stories. Those guests this week, John Hendry, who's a professional speaker and author, as well as a retired public school board trustee, Caitlin Kilgore, the co-owner of Dream Team Video Productions, and Janice Jim, who's the vice president of Cycle Waterloo Region. John, I'll start with you on this one. City of Cambridge made the decision to end its relationship with the social media platform X. It will no longer be using X to share information with the public, using a variety of other channels, of course, but no longer X. Question is, John, should other municipalities follow Cambridge's lead in this regard?
Well, I think as long as there's input from the constituents, perhaps, and debate around the table, it's probably a protest move against Elon Musk and what's going on in the U.S. So as long as they're still able to communicate with the public in a meaningful way and they're able to get to as much of the general population as they can, then I would support that. I think Canadians at this point in time are fed up with being the underdog, and they're starting to take action, which is, I think if there's anything to come of all this, it's the forced patriotism that we have now found ourselves. And I like it. I think the more we flex our Canadian muscle, the better. I mean, we're a much smaller country, obviously, but it's a show of protest, if you will, and I would support them.
Caitlin, what are your thoughts on municipalities ending the use of X as a way of communicating with the public?
Well, even from when it was announced that Elon had bought and taken over, a lot of companies have taken off paid promotions and marketings that they had through that platform. A lot of different people, celebrities, influencers, whatever, different companies have also completely removed their accounts leading up. So this being a city within our area makes it a lot stronger, but it's nowhere near new. This is a movement that a lot of people have been going forward with. And to me, I think it is a brilliant move, because if you go under the majority of any news article from a certified news outlet, towns, cities, things like this, a lot of the comments are extremely just plain racist. The amount of comments, the amount of reports that I put through with just plain violence, straight death threats, using derogatory racist language, and every time it's nothing, they didn't do anything wrong, it doesn't go against this. That was all new, because before, no, there's a difference between freedom of speech and hate speech, which has consequences. Freedom of speech does come with consequences as well. And I think if we can find another platform, I mean, their website still exists. If you can make an interactive platform within your own websites, if, like John said, we can come up with our own Canadian platforms. The other thing I think we need to remember too is all these social media platforms were never intended to become news platforms or political platforms. They were intended for us to connect with each other on personal levels. And I think that's the one thing we've all forgotten about. And the other thing is who on the other side is making these decisions. I was watching John Oliver last night, and they did the same thing about when Facebook put in people to start regulating and going through post violations and what their process was. And they had people and videos of what those policies originally were. And they were very, very weak. And at the end of the day, came down to almost the person whose lap it handed into. Did they really think it was offensive? And then move on.
You say something there, Caitlin, that I've really struggled with when you say, this isn't what the platform was intended to be. It was a way for us to interact. But it's what the platform turned into. Is that the fault of the platform? Do we hold the platform to account for that? Or do we hold the people using the platform to account for that?
I think it goes both ways. And that's when we see different policies and stuff change on all these different platforms throughout, whether it be, Instagram was all about sharing pictures. You can even post photos. You could post one little blurry photo from your BlackBerry or your iPhone, and then you had Facebook, which was originally to connect you with former classmates, which by the time Facebook really got to like my generation and us when we were in high school was more just connecting with the people and making friends around you. Shout out to MySpace. That was right before that. That was all music platform based. I think they all originally had this one motion, but all of a sudden another one comes through and starts becoming popular. So now you have to pull a bit from that. And you see a lot of similarities between all of the different platforms and how they have grown. And I think that's inevitable that you're going to have change and growth within them. And I think really whose responsibility does it fall on that it ended that way? Is there really a clear picture? Because it comes from both sides, user and admin.
I remember when I first started using Instagram, somebody had described it as the same pretty pictures as Facebook without the fighting. And just this morning, a coworker of mine was exasperated, saying I had to get off Facebook last night because I was about to start fighting with people over the election. So here we are, social, in air quotes, media. Janice, what do you think? Should other cities follow Cambridge's lead and get the HE double hockey sticks off X?
Definitely. Twitter's become a toxic cesspool, and Elon removed the fact checking on it. So there's more and more just misinformation and fake posts on it, and the ads have become garbage. Like, I'm a political junkie. Twitter used to be great for following breaking news and like little tips that you don't see in mainstream media, but now it's just, a lot of people are questioning whether it's worth it anymore. So in official capacity for like cities and companies, I totally agree with them getting off of Twitter, because it's the benefit, it's not there anymore. And like Caitlin said, every single post that anyone posts is subject to hateful comments, misogyny, racial comments, and it's not worth the effort for city staff to be monitoring and policing it. So there's much better ways for cities and municipalities to share information.
I had originally thought that the city was making a mistake in this regard because it should be dispensing information as widely as possible, and X is still a platform, and just use it to post, turn off the comments. But then I thought more about it, and I realized if you're on X, you're still bringing people to the platform, and they're going to see more than just what you are posting, and what they might be seeing may not even be accurate information, etc. So I'm kind of starting to lean that way, and it'll be really interesting to see where this goes. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. That's where we're going here. When we come back, I want to, because he's still taking so much heat for showing up and giving the thumbs up to the American bench and not wearing a Team Canada jersey, Wayne Gretzky. There is a petition circulating to revoke Elon Musk's Canadian citizenship. So based on how everybody is so angry with the great one, should we take away his citizenship too? He's made no bones about being an American citizen for a long time now. We'll talk about that with our Friday 4 Roundtable coming up. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It's also our Friday 4 Roundtable. Caitlin Kilgore, Janice Jim, and John Hendry are with us. One more topic for us to tackle. It's the story that won't go away. So for talk radio, it's the gift that keeps on giving. But Wayne Gretzky comes under tremendous fire for having the nerve to show up in Boston at the final of the Four Nations face-off, not wearing a Team Canada jersey, coming onto the ice from the American side, giving thumbs up to the American team, and oh yeah, by the way, being a friend of the President of the United States, Donald Trump. So, since there's a petition circulating asking that Elon Musk's Canadian citizenship be revoked, I thought, why don't we ask the same thing of Wayne Gretzky? After all, he seems to be a traitor at this point, doesn't he? Caitlin, I'll start with you. What do you think? Should we tell the great one to stay in Los Angeles and not come back?
I think there's a big difference between what Elon has done, can do, compared to Wayne. Elon can pose a very dangerous threat to what he can do with what I'm so blanking right now, with all the different things he's done now with the departments he is in with the U.S. government. Whereas Wayne Gretzky, do I agree with what he's doing? Absolutely not. Is he clearly showing where he stands and where he sides? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, are we not allowed to support who we want to support? He's also lived in the United States for a long time. A vast majority of his career playing in Los Angeles, playing in New York, coaching Phoenix, all those different things. He spent the vast majority of his life in the States, so it's no surprise that he has interest and pull, but he's also been making it very clear when he came out as the representative for Canada for that game with nothing Canadian on him, really. I think now is just the time where people are just screaming whatever they want. Are we really going to actually take this into a serious conversation and go, just because somebody does support and has shown support for, Donald Trump, who's the American president now, does that really go for revoking citizenship? Because then when's the next step? Now we're just going to get this giant gray area, and the mess and just, oh my goodness, the direction of cats in a bag it will be is just insane. So I think, well, then what is it? Then you're not allowed to show support then for a country you've also lived in just because it's not your home country? Where's the line?
Cats in a bag. I like that reference. Janice, how do we solve a problem like Wayne Gretzky?
Yeah, I agree with Caitlin that it's a slippery slope. We pride ourselves in our freedoms, and voicing your opinion of, an unpopular figure is part of your freedom of expression, and we shouldn't be able to take away someone's citizenship because of that. I think it just gives us, time to examine how much credence we give Wayne Gretzky and people like Kevin O'Leary, people like that, how much, weight we should give to their opinions when they're clearly not supporting Canada at like a time of need of, a need for national unity. That hockey game was cathartic for a lot of people. It came at the right time. And we don't usually show our pride in that way. And that was a moment for us to show it. When Trump is every day, like threatening and bullying us and threatening to take us over, I think there is a time for a little bit of extra patriotism. I'm not usually one to be like flag waving, but this time it feels right.
It struck me, and, in light of what both of you just said, that, do we revoke somebody's citizenship based on who their friends are, who they might support politically? Of course not. That's an extreme example, and I used it deliberately. But the idea is to get this conversation going about Wayne Gretzky, a conversation that just hasn't stopped. And look, it would be fair to say that Justin Trudeau is as unpopular a political figure as anyone these days, at least in some circles. Would we feel the same if player X, Y, or Z came out and said, I'm a big Justin Trudeau fan? Would there be a portion of the country saying, well, now you're a turncoat because look what Trudeau's done to the country, which we hear again and again, and maybe it's because I spend too much time on X. John, what are your thoughts?
I think Wayne Gretzky has the right to be friends with whoever he chooses. It's got nothing to do with us here in Canada. And I think it's an extreme measure to come on to someone who was born and raised here, whose city of Brantford is literally a Gretzky town. His father, I mean, you can't wipe out that history simply because of a choice he made. And I really admire, when it first happened, I was offended as well. And I thought, boy, the first thing they should do is take the banner down in Edmonton. But the more I think of it, I think it's totally unfair to him. And I think Wayne is handling it really well. He's not commenting at all. And I think he would love to comment to set the record straight. Unfortunately, you got people like Donald Trump who commented after the fact as well. And that certainly didn't help Wayne Gretzky's case. And if anything, it's turned even more people against him. I mean, he was a great hockey player. We loved him as a Canadian. We'll always love him as a Canadian. He's living in the U.S., so he gives a thumbs up. I mean, what's the big deal? He probably knows all of those people personally. And, to me, it was just an unfortunate gesture that I'm sure he would not have done had he known the flack that would have happened after the fact. But certainly, I think taking away his citizenship would probably be extreme. Would we do that in the case way back of Alexander Graham Bell? He was born in Brantford. We seem to lock onto it that he's Canadian, but he lived his whole life in the U.S. So, I mean, it's an extreme case, and I think when time comes out, he's going to explain his situation and his position, and as his wife had said, he is a Canadian, and he's proud of being a Canadian. So I think we should leave it at that.
I can tell you this much: Wayne Gretzky can play on my hockey team anytime. That is for sure. John, we'll bring him up. The overager for the Kitchener Rangers, Wayne Gretzky. John Hendry is a professional speaker and author, retired public school board trustee. Caitlin Kilgore, the co-owner of Dream Team Video Productions, and Janice Jim, the vice president of Cycle Waterloo Region. Thank you all for making time for our show again this morning. It's been a great conversation, and enjoy the weekend ahead. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Okay, executive decision. You can just tone that one down there, DJ Dev. I told you, all Request Fridays on this show, oh my gosh, are better than elections because you get what you want. You make the call or send the email, make your request, and we play it. Whatever the HE double hockey sticks that was. DJ Dev, I can't even remember it sounded like gobbledygook to me.
Yeah, that was Skibbity by Little Big.
Skibbity by Little Big. I'll take songs I never want to hear again for 500, Alex. All right. Nate Dogg had that request.
Yes, sir.
Of course he did. Nate Dogg tends to drink early in the day. Okay, it's getting late in the morning. It's so late, it's almost noon hour. And then we open up the phone lines for your 12 o'clock Talkback Hour. On this Friday, it is a Free Phones Friday edition. Did you know that Chrystia Freeland was, quote, a whack? And that the biggest problem with Pierre Poilievre is, quote, that he's not a MAGA guy? Those quotes from Donald Trump today, talking about Chrystia Freeland and Pierre Poilievre. And it was suggested to me that maybe we could ask you what name you would like to call Donald Trump. Maybe you've got one, and maybe you can also explain the riding of Kitchener-Conestoga to me in this provincial election. We've got lots to discuss. Open phone lines so you can be a part of the discussion with Free Phones Friday starting right after this update from the 570 News Center. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio, and Roger. Let's have a chat. A provincial election that solves nothing and confuses the HE double hockey sticks out of me in Kitchener-Conestoga. I thought that Wilmot was madder than hell and not going to take it anymore. But more than 50% of eligible voters turned out, cast a ballot, and re-elected a representative from the party that is bankrolling the land assembly. Make it make sense. All we have heard from Wilmot Township is how opposed it is to the land assembly. And then they get an election and an opportunity to change their representative, and they re-elect the same old, same old. Not only that, but the Liberal candidate who said, hey, NDP, get out of the way. I'm the only one that can save the farmland. If you leave the race now, polling says I have the votes to win. And you know what? He was right. He came in second. And if you added the NDP votes to his, he would have beat the representative of the party that's bankrolling the land assembly. It's so wild to me. And instead, the Greens support the NDP, which is still not enough. The Liberal candidate's car gets vandalized. and they tell him to drop out, Kitchener, Conestoga, what have you gone and done? I'm just confused. I'm confused and confounded. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. Let's get to the phones on Free Phones Friday. Tom, good afternoon.
Hey there, Mike.
Good, thanks.
Right. Well, we got one election down, another one on its way, but I have two questions. That one is that if with the G7 meeting coming up and Mr. Ford having, or not Mr. Ford, I'm sorry, Mr. Trump having a criminal record as a convicted felon, how would he be allowed to come into Canada if he has not received a pardon? That's my first.
He's the president of the United States, Tom. That's how. Well, it does make a difference. You don't have to like it, but that makes a difference. That's why.
Well, I'm saying so it's okay. All right, but I don't have to like it. Okay.
Nope, you definitely don't.
Okay. So we can protest about that, right? Can't we?
Sure we can. We can protest about whatever the hell we want to protest about. Okay.
We're a free country and a sovereign nation. There we go. Okay. Secondly, is that I received a phone call yesterday from Marat Stiles reminding me to go out and vote. And I think it had something to do with regards to the candidate in Cambridge. Around 5:30, I'd gone out and voted. They're already gone out early to vote anyhow. And all of a sudden, I hear a knock at the door, and I open. I turn around, and I see something in my mailbox, which has something to do with a pamphlet regarding the candidate for Cambridge, the NDP candidate. And I sort of like, is this just a little too late regarding this and that? So my question is that now the provincial election is over, and there should be something. Why don't the political leaders and their members who are running for office in our areas, why don't they make themselves more public, make them more visible, and so we can know more about them, not just the party's platform and their politics, but know more about them so we can make a very concise decision about if we're going to vote for not the party or not the person, but the party.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think we get this mixed up. We're voting for the person. No, you're voting for the party. That's what you're voting for. Is what you should be voting for. So that's my question.
All right, Tom, I appreciate that. Look, I'll say this much. I do think that we as voters, as citizens, to use the word that Peter Wollstonecroft, our friend from the University of Waterloo, retired professor of political science, used last week when we talked about voter turnout, we've forgotten our responsibilities, Peter believes, as citizens. So I think that we should accept some responsibility to do some of our own homework. We can do this. It's really important, right? So I'll give you that. But on the other side of it, I will also tell you, Tom, that I think the parties do the bare minimum required in order to win. They've figured out how to work within this system, which is why I strongly believe the system needs to change. But since they've figured out the system so well and how to win within it, they'll just keep doing the bare minimum to keep winning. It's my opinion. Joe, good afternoon.
Afternoon, Mike. First off, I want to commend Doug Ford. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant for calling an election when he did. Keep the communists out of Queen's Park.
Joe, can you said that earlier. I let it pass. It's been bugging me ever since. Stop with the communists, okay?
Well, okay.
Do you know what communism is, Joe?
Yes.
Okay.
It's the one guy working his ass off, working two jobs and two doors
no,
down,
Joe. Okay.
Anyway,
Stop it. Stop it. Now you can want to keep the lefties out, the liberals and the NDP, whatever. But communism, look it up and then get back to me, okay?
Hey, but I want to disagree with you strongly about one thing.
Sure.
We need as many of those parties as possible so they can dilute the vote and keep them out of Queen's Park for as long as possible.
Okay. I'm happy to be disagreed with on that front. I get it. I think the left should cooperate better. Like, you got to put some egos aside there, you NDPs and you liberals and you Greens, and figure out who's going to lead you under one banner into the next election. Hell, just for the sake of getting better candidates, okay? Because forget diluting the vote. 124 seats, 3 parties on the left side of the spectrum. You need 372, and you sure as hell didn't find 372 quality candidates. I promise you that. Anyway, another Tom is with us. Afternoon, Tom.
Good afternoon, Mike. Thank you for taking my call. I'd like to talk to you about perhaps a trivial subject for some people, but my mailbox has been destroyed by snow plowing operations 4 or 5 times over the last decade, and I'm reaching the end of my tether. And what I would like to do is to find out I live on a rural road where the speed of the snowplow, in my estimation, increases so much that it destroys the mailbox. Mine was hit by the wing, but that's neither here nor there. I would like if people listening to the news show would contact me at tpamalloy@gmail.com and let me know that their box was damaged, and together maybe we can do something, because I've been writing to the council and of Wilmot for the last 2 to 3 weeks. I'm getting no response, no cooperation, not even prepared to listen to anything I have to say.
Come on.
And it's very frustrating, and I tried to get in to get my mail, which I don't get mail now because the mailbox is gone, but I tried to get in, and I had to crawl out because the drift was so deep. My wife was extremely worried, and I'm not a young man, Mike. I'm well in my 70s. So this is a safety issue, it's a respect issue, it's a discriminating issue, because villages in the subdivision, their boxes are not destroyed. Only rural roads get their boxes destroyed. And when I mean destroyed, I mean decimated. So, and I did call them at the beginning of the season and asked them to be careful. And I've offered suggestions as to how we could prevent it. Nobody listens, nobody cares. And it's very frustrating.
Tom, thank you for that. We're going to get on Wilmot Township's case. They should have followed up on this 100%.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate. Listen, that's the stuff. My old friend Jeff Allen always said, Farwell, dog poop on the sidewalk, right? We all see it. It bugs us. Tom's got a case here. I know, Wilmot, you were busy with a 51% tax increase. Well, here's one of your residents. He's offered solutions. I'm going to go straight to the top, Tom. I'm going to get somebody to get back to you. You watch. We're going to do this. We're going to fix Tom's mailbox. We're going to fix it at township expense. That's what we're going to do. And then we're going to right the problem, aren't we? Yes, we are, because that's what we do on this show. We fix things. It's the Mike Farwell Show. Your 12 o'clock Talkback Hour, free phones, Friday, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I don't know how you listen to this stuff. I like my rock hard, too, but Jiminy Christmas. Anyway, it's an all-request Friday. If you have a song you'd like to hear, we'll play a bit of it. Sometimes less than other times, depending on how heavy or how much it annoys me. That's just heavy. Jay, thanks for the request. Get yours in when you call in. Ask DJ Dev to play your song, or shoot me an email, mike@570news.com. We can probably squeeze in 3 or 4 more on the show today. Free Phones Friday continues. Gilbert, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike.
What's on your mind?
Watching the Trump meeting with the British Prime Minister, I was rather disappointed when the question was asked about Canadian sovereignty of being the 51st state, and the British Prime Minister deflected on the answer and would not give one. That tells me that maybe we should get rid of our king and become a real sovereign nation all alone.
Well, that's an interesting thought, Gilbert, and I appreciate the call. I mean, there are anti-monarchists prior to this latest turn of events. It's such an interesting world these days. But basically, what Gilbert is saying is if London ain't got our back, why should we have its king? Fair enough. Kyle, good afternoon.
My friend, as I heard from the caller 2 times ago about his mailbox becoming destroyed because of the plow, I, as your premier, is going to get that settled, and we will fix that plow from hitting that mailbox the next time the next round of snow will come in. How is that?
It's not bad. I like it better than screaming, Kyle, so that's pretty good.
Hey, I just want to give a shout out. I know that you guys are playing the, is it Sarnia tonight, the Sarnia Sting?
Yes, it is.
Liswell is playing the Stars, the St. Thomas Stars tonight, and we are actually going to be unveiling or showing our special edition Patty Fest jerseys that are coming tonight and the next game of next Friday as well. So if people are in Perth County or in the area and they want to come and see a Friday night hockey game as well, we are having our special edition Patty Fest hockey jerseys tonight at the game. So check them out if you guys want to. Thanks a lot, Mike.
Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it. Go Sykes, beat those Stars, and ain't nothing like Patty Fest in Listowel, eh? Oh, yeah, baby. Love me some Patty Fest. Steve, you're on the Talkback Hour. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. How's it going, bud?
Good, thanks. And you?
Right on. I'm good, buddy. Thanks.
Good.
Just had a quick little comment there. You know, you got, I don't know, this Joe guy makes me laugh, man. You know, he's calling in, that's all communist this, communist that. I remember him talking big about Donald Trump and how much he liked him until his tariff talk started affecting his daddy's business there. And it's pretty easy for a guy like that to start talking crap about social programs, democratic socialism, things like that, which is what I think he really means. I don't think he really knows the definition of anything, really. But it's pretty easy for a guy who's sitting at his daddy's cottage in Port Elgin all the time to talk about people who need programs to get by. I just wish he'd bite his tongue and shut his mouth a little bit. Thanks, Mike. You're the man.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate the call. I would wholeheartedly concur that Joe knows not the definition of communism. He just likes to throw around the word. It's Free Phones Friday. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Quickly have to share this email I received to Mike at 570news.com under the headline, subject line, I am done with people complaining after this election. As of today, I do not want one person uttering complaints about our healthcare collapsing, our education system in the dumpster, affordable housing, rent control, no two-way go, widening of Highway 7, and finally the land grab. Wilmot, get ready to welcome Toyota. I need someone to explain to me why you elect a person who turns their back on his constituents. This election was the chance to help make change to all of the concerns that everyone has been talking about, and people choose the party responsible for these issues. Yours, a very upset and confused person who did vote. Appreciate the email. Back to the phones. It's Free Phones Friday. Mayor Jake, good afternoon.
Mike, how are you now?
I'm good, and you?
Oh, not so bad. I kind of wanted to share a quick story. One time when I was 18, I just turned 18, and we had I believe it was I don't know if it was provincial or mayor vote at the time. It was a long time ago, but I sat and I looked at my dad and I asked him, who are you voting for? And he looked me dead in the eye and he said, mind your business. And since that moment, when he said to mind your own, I kind of take it the same way. And I don't like to share with people who I vote for, because at the end of the day, it's who you choose is who you think represents you the best. I have friends who voted PC, Liberal, NDP, Green Party, and I will say they're all my friends no matter what. I don't judge them for who they vote for. I don't judge them for who they love. And I think that's something that we're kind of losing, and especially in this country, is we're getting mad at each other on who we vote for and who we support. But at the end of the day, you need to remember that we are all just one and we are all human beings.
Mayor Jake, well said. I hope that's on your campaign platform in the next municipal election, but I think we have lost that. I know we have. Things are far too black and white, and it's either you or it's me. There's not really a whole lot of us these days, and that is troublesome, to be sure. We had competing visions, somewhat competing visions. We had similar visions for the province with slight variations, and we chose what we chose, and we chose a third consecutive progressive conservative majority in this province. We'll continue talking about it as Free Phones Friday continues here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Back to the phones we go. Peter, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike.
What's on your mind?
I want to talk a little bit here about the mailbox issue. We have three distinct different issues. First of all, we have a private citizen requiring to receive federal literature, mail. So we have federal, we have private, and then we have township.
Private being the mailbox owner's property?
Mailbox,
yeah, okay, yeah.
The owner of the mail and the owner of the post.
Yeah.
The mailbox and the post is going on township property, which this whole arrangement is arranged through federal agreement. There's a more of a grandfathered handshake arrangement, but technically The township has vandalized private property.
I think so too, Peter. So let's fix Tom's mailbox.
Yeah, here's the solution.
Okay.
Yes, we are required to make sure that our mailboxes are free and clear so that mail can be delivered. Before mail can be delivered, or before we can get to the shoulder of the road and clean the road, the township has to do their part. So the reality is the township has vandalized your mailbox. Now,
Peter, you keep saying we. Are you a plow operator?
No, sir.
Okay.
Oh,
so
no, I'm not.
What's the solution? What are we going to do for Tom's mailbox? We need to get this thing fixed, Peter.
Okay, so the solution is the owner, my mailbox, my post is my responsibility. I fix it. I send the bill to the township. They broke it. That is no different than any other type of vandalism.
Yeah, but I don't think that's going to work.
Well,
I think the township's just going to ignore your bill, right?
Okay, so then actually not really, because then you take it one step further and you can say, hey, listen, the federal government wants me to do this so that I can get Canada.
Why can't we? Okay, I got two. I think I have simpler solutions here, Peter.
Okay.
Okay, number one, if it's my mailbox, maybe I could relocate it to a safer place so that it doesn't get hit by the plow. It's been
that I've seen them on swinging poles, but then the mail person can't get to it.
I'm open to looking at Tom's property to see if there's another place along the lane to the house that he can get that mailbox erected. Because since it's been decimated anyway, let's just do it. But I would only do that with the township's support. I think the township can jump on board here and help replace this thing.
Correct. Yes,
okay.
There's responsibility as far as the township's concerned.
Okay.
However, it has to fall in to the requirements and the boundaries that the federal...
No, Peter, you're making it too hard. You're making it too hard.
No.
Yes, you are.
but here's the thing.
Okay.
Those are the three things involved.
Yeah, well, we know that, but it doesn't matter. You don't make it so confusing or complicated. Just make it simple.
Okay, so the owner of the mailbox...
Yeah, Peter, you're not making it simple on me.
No, I'm explaining how it gets done.
I already told you how it gets done. I told you a simple one. Move the mailbox and do it with the township's support. Simple.
As long as the mailbox then is in the place that the federal government says.
Not the federal government doesn't matter. Nobody cares.
Yes, it's the Canada Post.
All right. Peter, I love you for trying. Here's my take on this. It's way easier to beg forgiveness later. Fix the problem. Let's fix it at the source. Let's get Tom a repaired mailbox. Let's get the township of Wilmot to help him out. Evan, good afternoon.
How are you doing, Mike?
I'm terrific.
Oh, that's good to hear. Well, it's Friday.
Game day, baby.
Rangers game, baby.
Yes,
yeah.
sir. Game day.
Oh, yeah. Anyways, I got two things to talk about. The mailbox issue, and then who I think is going to score the first goal for the game tonight.
All right, who's going to score the first goal for the game tonight?
I'm going to go with Misseljevic.
Misseljevic. I'm going with Luke Ellenis. How are you going to fix the mailbox?
Well, you just use a, like any ordinary person mechanic would do, use a screwdriver and just screw it back in.
We're going to need more than that. But here's what I'm going to do. Here's my offer. I'm going to go rent me right after the show. Let's get it done before the game tonight. We can do this. I'm going to go rent me a post hole digger. I'm going to get out there. I got my work boots from Red Wing. They took care of me during the last Farwell for Hire campaign. I got some steel toe. I got some safety boots. I'm ready to go thanks to Red Wing shoes. Going to go out there to Wilmot Township, to Tom's mailbox with my post hole digger that I'm renting right after the show. I'm going to dig him a good old fence post deep enough to secure a new rural mailbox. We're going to put a new mailbox in that ground, baby, and we're going to make it stick. And I'm going to go grab a Wilmot councillor on the way there. Not physically, but like, come on with me. We're going to go fix Tom's mailbox. We're going to get this. We're going to get stuff done here on the show today. That's what we're going to do. Andre, Free Phones Friday. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. I love it.
Yeah, you love it because we get stuff done around here. That's why. That's right. Okay.
That's right. So do the math about the mailbox. Yeah, do the math.
Andre, you're killing me. You waited so long. Go, buddy. Give me something new.
Okay.
Okay.
So I did talk to a lot of people, like I said, on the show about the election because I was confused, and that's what people told me. They were confused.
You were confused? I'm shocked.
No, not after yesterday. Not after yesterday. Stop it now. But the thing is, I think the professor was right when he was afraid for the low electoral people. But the thing is that we need electoral because I believe that
we need electoral reform, yes.
Yeah, we would have had probably 85% of the Ontario population would have voted.
Let's not get carried away.
I'm telling you.
No, you're telling me, but I'm not believing you. No 85%. Settle down.
Try it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to try it. My new mission is electoral reform. I'm starting my homework this weekend. I'm not even joking. My beloved and I were watching the results last night when I got home from the United Way's Trivia Challenge, which was so much fun. Thanks to the United Way Waterloo Region communities and all the people that supported. Came out for a great time at Catalyst Commons last night. It was fantastic. Got home, watching the results. I was getting so angry. My thumbs are flying furiously on my phone because I got a X or tweet or whatever. And I said, love, electoral reform. That is my new mission. I'm going to start my homework this weekend. I'm going to learn as much as I can learn. I'm going to talk to experts on the show. We're going to fix this electoral system like we're fixing Tom's mailbox. All right? Mike Farwell Show, stamped at no erases. This is Free Phones Friday, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Right back to the phones we go. Terry, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Mike. Do you remember when we used to have the emissions test when Mike Harris introduced it, that Northern Ontario were exempt from it? Do you remember that?
Yep, I do.
Okay. I remember some time ago you mentioned that you wish that our province made winter tires mandatory.
Absolutely.
Okay. I heard the forecast there for Kitchener. It's 0 and snowing right now?
I don't see any snow outside. Oh, wait, it is snowing, yeah.
Okay, see, I've been in the Windsor area off and on for the last couple of months, and right now I'm in Windsor, and it's +7, and there's no snow on the ground.
Listen,
now,
good for the goose, good for the gander, Terry. Don't
say, Mike. You know where I'm getting to, right?
I know I'm getting to. You know what, Windsor? Screw you. That's what I say. When I'm premier, that's what I'll say.
Actually, I saw cousin Doug's bus here a couple of days ago. I think he was in town. I saw it on the 401. But
nice.
Anyway, yeah. I mean, why not just make it like regional? Like if you live in Northern Ontario, you should get winter tires because you get snow 10 months of the year. In Southern Ontario, like the very bottom tip, you might get 2 snowfalls a winter, and 2 days later it warms up to, let's say, +7, and there's no snow on the ground.
I get where you're coming from.
You go through that trouble?
I get where you're coming from, Terry, but we have difficulty, it seems, with the simple things. Don't make it more complicated, right? We're going to have to, some of us will have to suck it up from time to time.
Okay, Mike, I live close to where you are, and I used to live in where you are, basically. I could throw a stone from my house and hit your house where I used to live, but I've never put winter tires on my car. You know what I do, Mike, when the weather's bad? I stay home and have a beer.
Terry, it's an idea I can get behind, but as somebody who does live in Southern Ontario and adopted winter tires many years ago, I swear by them. I'll never drive without them again, and that's even in this relatively balmy climate compared to Northwestern Ontario, Thunder Bay, where I also lived for a spell. So anyway, well, I'm full of ideas. I'm happy to discuss them. Dan, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. First-time caller.
Welcome to the show. Thanks for calling in.
Thank you, sir. I just had a little joke for you. Bring some laughter to the show, maybe.
You don't think I'm funny?
Oh, you're hilarious.
Oh, okay. Go for it, Dan.
Okay. My Aunt Edna wasn't much for pets, but she had a couple of monkeys. And unfortunately, they passed away within days of each other. And she really had a hard time letting go. So she thought, I'm going to take them to a taxidermist and see if I can, keep them with me.
Stuff them, yeah.
Yeah. So she gets there, and the guy looks them over, and he says, yeah, we can do that for you. He said, would you like them mounted? And she said, no, holding hands will be fine.
I wasn't sure where it was going to go, Dan, but I'm okay with the outcome.
Just on the edge.
Dan, let me ask you this, if I may, sir.
Okay.
Okay. First-time caller. Like, you wait and wait. I'm sure you've listened to the show for, like, minutes and minutes, And now you call, and that's going to be your debut, eh?
Well, it's the Friday free-for-all, and a lot of your topics are real great to listen to, but I just never get the urge to chime in, so.
But today you had the urge to tell the joke about the mounted monkeys.
I did. Go Rangers.
Go Rangers. Dan, I love it. I wanted to say the word. Anyway, I really loved it. I'll just stop myself before I get in trouble. Francis, good afternoon.
Yes, Mike. I want to say good afternoon. I want to say I'll save you a lot of money. I lived in the country, had many mailboxes destroyed, but not only the mailbox, but the post also. So I finally smartened up, got myself a 5-gallon pail, put some rocks around the post that I put in at the legal height, and you move it where the road has been cleared by the snowplow, because eventually you're going to put a post out there, the plow has to go around it, and the snow builds up. So you just stick the pail, you move it down to where it's cleared for a few days, and then the plow can plow at the other part, and then you can move it back to the spot where it originally was.
Francis, stop making so much sense.
Well, it worked.
Of course it did. See? Simple answers. Peter, we went on for several minutes talking about the federal government's role in all of this. We don't need Justin Trudeau's permission to move a mailbox, okay? That's what we declare here on the show today. It's the Mike Farwell Show, Free Phones Friday. You can be a part of it too, even if it's a tasteless joke. Love you, Dan. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Game day, baby. Also Fridays. Who doesn't love a Friday here on the Farwell Show? Back to the phones. Jay, good afternoon.
Oh, hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad. Just to get off the little topic. But first of all, I like that intro song there.
No, I'm glad you liked it. I'll tell Phil. He requested it.
I was just curious about that question you said yesterday, or that story you had about injuries.
Yeah.
That you were going to tell today.
Oh, my gosh. I did say something like that, didn't I, Jay? And I told you I was going to tell you today during the Talkback Hour.
Yeah.
And then I got busy, and was it going to, oh my gosh, I'm such a moron. Jay, you are so right. It was an injury?
Yeah, it was one of those stupid injuries.
I remember saying, I was going to save it for today. I need to write stuff down. I'm trying to remember my really stupid injury now, besides injuring my shoulder while I slept. And I would tell the story. I promise you I would, Jay, but I am completely... Oh, man, I really owe you one, buddy. I owe all 44 of you one, the 44 listeners of this show. I can't for the life of me remember, Jay.
That's okay.
No, it's not. I just broke one of the cardinal rules of radio. You have to deliver on your promises. I'm sorry. I'm completely at a loss.
Oh, and by the way,
yeah,
can you touch your toes?
No, are you kidding me? I'm a fat, out of shape slob. I can't touch my toes. I'm still trying though. Does that count?
Yeah, that counts. I'll give you that.
All right, Jay. Thanks. I'm going to try to remember over the weekend. I promise. Oh my gosh.
All right.
All right.
Rangers, have fun at the game.
Thank you. I don't know how I can possibly have more fun at the game than I've had here on the show today. Jay's right. I remember saying yesterday during the Talkback Hour, I got this story, but I'll wait and tell you today. And I don't even remember what story I was referencing. But ding dang it, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to go back and listen to the entire show yesterday and figure it out. That's my homework. Hey, have a great weekend. If you're at the game tonight, I'll see you there. Now you know with Rob Snow is coming up. My name's Mike Farwell. Bye for now.